Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IRSportsDaily.com. I am Greg Flammang. My normal co-host, Jamie Ueyama, is on vacation. He's taking a day with his son. His wife is on a work trip for the Canadian women's volleyball team. She's off. Jamie's doing daddy duty today, so it's just me. Wanted to talk to you guys about the big upcoming wide receiver recruiting weekend with players set to commit. Kaydon Finley, Brayden Robinson, and Devin Fitzgerald all set to announce their commitments to which school they will be attending in 2026. And obviously, we feel good about Notre Dame's chances there. We've talked a bunch about it in the last couple of weeks. And that's going to come to a head, right? Wide receiver has been one of the biggest kind of question marks during the entire cycle for Notre Dame recruiting-wise. Mike Brown has been under a ton of pressure from Notre Dame fans, probably from his coworkers, right? His other coaches needed to land a good wide receiver class, and they are set up to do just that and win out over some very big schools in doing so. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about that. And then whatever else comes up in the chat, right? We got Independence Day coming up. There's going to be some declarations from Notre Dame's wide receiver prospects. And you can make a declaration from your independence from stiff, scratchy dress shirts. That's right. ESQ's award-winning, luxuriously soft, breathable bamboo dress shirts are 25% off through the weekend. It's a huge holiday sale from Ge Wang. 25% off on the bamboo dress shirts. Declare your independence from stiff, scratchy dress shirts. Whether you're grilling in the backyard or heading out for fireworks, you deserve to look sharp and stay cool. Naturally moisture wicking, wrinkle resistant, sustainably made. These shirts feel like freedom. But this deal ends when the fireworks do. So visit esqclothing.com right now for 25% off on all bamboo dress shirts. The Shark 83 says Jamie recovering from that Canadian Day 2-day bender. That's right. Jamie's off on it. CFB Hertz wants a refund. Sorry about that. With Jamie not being here. I know everyone's sad about that. So, but let's get into it. All right. Notre Dame is going to get the announcement from, let's just go in order here. Kadon Finley is going to be announcing tomorrow on July 4th. And this is one of the biggest recruitments of the entire class for Notre Dame. Kaydon Finley, the 4-star wide receiver. He's ranked around the top 100 in the 247 composite. That's obviously going to go up and down as the cycle goes on, but I think this is one of the biggest ones. He is a top level target for them. They've been on him for a very long time. He's visited Notre Dame a bunch of times, and it originally trended very strongly for Notre Dame. It was trending kind of away maybe about a month ago. Texas was putting in the big push. They were treating him as a priority. And it looked like, okay, Texas is going to win this out. This is a hometown player in terms of he's from Texas right now. Texas made that push. You felt like, all right, Notre Dame couldn't close the deal kind of around springtime when he did a bunch of visits. Came for an unofficial visit, came for his official visit, and then the tide really turned there. And it looked like Notre Dame, Mike Brown, Marcus Freeman had gotten the job done here. We're going to wait to see the announcement from him tomorrow. It's huge, right? And it's huge for Mike Brown, especially. He had a tough end to the class in 2024 2025, with Scrap Richardson, Elijah Burris, and Jerome Bettis Jr. He missed on some top prospects kind of late in the process. He missed on some top prospects, Derek Meadows being one of those players that was heavily linked to Notre Dame, missed on that player. And, people were upset about that, right? They felt like Notre Dame could have done a better job at wide receiver, didn't do as well as fans thought that they could have. This would be a huge get for Notre Dame. I'm going to throw up some clips here of Kaydon Finley. I mean, it's huge, right? So he's considered of the wide receivers, right? And look, we know on this show rankings are a sham, right? So we don't totally go by those things, but we know that he is the top rated wide receiver in the class of all the prospects. And you can see why here. He's working out of the slot. And the thing we really like about him here is his ability to run after the catch, right? So he makes a catch, gets outside, and he's able to do this. To me, he is kind of a player where you think to yourself, what if Jaden Greathouse was maybe a tick faster, right? He may not be as refined route runner as Jaden Greathouse, but I think he's at least close to that, right? Like he is a very advanced wide receiver, right? So there's been a lot of questions about what's going on with Cam Williams, right? He was another highly rated prospect. And I think that it was because of the rawness that he has. Kadon Finley does not have any of that rawness, right? Like he is more ready to play wide receiver at the next level than someone like Cam Williams was, who was a highly rated recruit. He's not, like I said, he's not as advanced as Jaden Greathouse, but he's also a bit more explosive, right? Like we didn't see this sort of thing from Jaden Greathouse when he was coming out of high school, right? It was mostly at the catch, running routes. Here you see him going up top and high pointing the ball and bringing the ball in. We're going to see another good route from here as well. And I think the juice to get over the top here is where that kind of separates him from someone like Greathouse, where he's able to get over the top of a safe of a corner who's kind of playing that cover three, who's already backpedaling. He's able to get over on the slot fade here. He's able to get over top of the slot and the corner that was sitting on there. It's basically a double team that he was able to get over the top of, right? That is the kind of juice that you're seeing from him. I think that he is more refined, more explosive than someone like Elijah Burris, who has had a very strong spring for Notre Dame. And just kind of going back to, where things stood with, the wide receiver class from a year ago. People looked at someone like Scrap Richardson, who was a little bit of a wild card, right? He was a speed guy, felt like, well, he didn't play wide receiver in high school. He was only playing quarterback. So it's going to be a learning curve for him. Elijah Burris, he was a low rated prospect, wasn't seen as, kind of like a top blue chip prospect. Comes into Notre Dame in the spring, looks really good, has a very good spring game, a lot bigger than I think a lot of people thought he might be. And he was getting open. He was making catches. He was making contributions. So the fortunate part of this for Mike Brown, when you look at a possible 2-year class, including Elijah Burris and Scrap Richardson, is those two players look like they might be hit. Scrap Richardson, people are very excited about him as a prospect right now. So that is something that he was able to hit on them. He's able to land someone like Kaydon Finley, able to land someone like Devin Fitzgerald and Brayden Robinson to go along with Dylan Faison and Bubba Frasier. You've got speed. You've got pedigree, right? Pedigree with Elijah Burris. When you go with Kaydon Finley, whose dad played tight end in the NFL. Obviously, Devin Fitzgerald's father, Larry Fitzgerald's one of the best wide receivers in the history of football, right? Pass catcher, not the fastest guy, much like his son, right? Doesn't have those elite physical traits. But when you look at what you're bringing into your program there, Jerome Bettis Jr., more pedigree, right? And he, for his part, looked a little bit more seasoned, physically mature than I think people thought might be the case when he came in. So that's something that's brewing for Notre Dame as well. So maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago, when it was very much up in the air about what Notre Dame's recruiting class was going to look like at wide receiver, looks a lot more rosier now. It's getting to the comments. Envy Irish says the Solo Greg show is giving me Sunday morning rewatch nostalgia. I had to pump it up. I got to get back into it, right? It's the off season for me as well. I got to get back into the solo shows because we've got that coming up when the season starts with the morning after recaps. I had to get it going. I got to get going. I got to get into football shape. Envy Irish makes a good point. Dynamic returners on the roster as well. Biaggi going to be cooking. That would become in the form of Braden Robinson. That would become in the form of Bubba Frasier. Let's talk about Devin Fitzgerald real quick because we just talked about him. This is the one where, the one thing Notre Dame was kind of lacking that could be lacking in this class is that boundary bigger receiver. And I think Devin Fitzgerald is going to fit that better than anyone else in the class. I think Dylan Faison, he could be a little bit bigger, but he's more of a speed guy, right? Much like his brother. He's more of a speed. I see him playing to the field. Devin Fitzgerald here, I love this route. Love how he catches the ball on the run, is able to break tackles. Not going to wow people with his physical attributes such as his speed or anything like that. Obviously, he looks like he plays fast enough, right? He's not a slow player. I think he's at least as fast as Jaden Greathouse is, which is obviously good because Jaden Greathouse has shown enough burst to make corners from Penn State look silly, to make the corners from Ohio State look silly. So I think he has at least enough burst for that. Obviously, you got to count on the pedigree. You got to count on the ball skills. You got to count on his just kind of IQ for the game of football and the wide receiver position. I think this was an offer that came in fairly late. And I think that always has people leery. But I think when I watch him, sometimes you watch a player and the offer comes in a little bit later and you start to look side-eye about that, or you start to feel a certain kind of way about that. It's like if he was so good, he's one of those people where you see the tape and you think, oh, this is a take for Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame needs to get in on this player. I have no questions. It's kind of similar to Preston Friesel at the tight end position, where as soon as I saw his tape, I was in. I didn't need any convincing. Sometimes you see a late offer and you see, I kind of understand why this may not have been a top of the board prospect for them. And so it's like you kind of view it as a consolation prize. I don't see that with Devin Fitzgerald at all. As soon as I saw his film, and we're watching it now, he pops. He pops off the screen, makes plays, breaks tackles, makes plays in traffic. That's always what you want to see, right, from a wide receiver like that, especially someone who you feel like is going to be bigger, right? He's going to be physical, and you want him to be able to make those plays in traffic. So that's a big deal. Eric Fasano says we don't need punt returners. Bryce Young going to block all the punts. Maybe, that's he's always got something up his sleeve, right? He's always got something up there. CFB Hertz says, bigger picture, I hope Notre Dame gets all three guys over the next couple of days. But even if Notre Dame does, wide receiver is still the weakest position in this recruiting class, isn't it? Or in contention with QB. I think you don't have that elite prospect. And to be fair, it is kind of hard to compare with other parts because they do have that elite prospect in all those other positions, right? With the exception of probably quarterback, right? So I think the running backs like Javion Osborne, I think is a top 100 player per composite. Obviously the O-line, the O-line doesn't really have that elite prospect either, right? I think sometimes we talk about these linemen in the way Jamie talks about them. We view the linemen as elite players. Like in my mind, I think of Grayson McKeo as an elite player. But then I have to catch myself and say, well, he's not ranked that way. So so in fairness to an outside observer, I think that we would not look at, or an outside observer would not look at Notre Dame's O-line classes like having an elite player. I think for us, we do, right? Like, I think we do feel like that. Like, I see Grayson McKeo as kind of like that caliber of prospect. So to me, it counts. Obviously tight end, right? With Ian Premer and Preston Friesel, like that's Ian Premer's an elite prospect. And we're talking about wide receivers. I think at the end with Rodney Dunham, he's a 5-star prospect. If Notre Dame lands Elijah Golden, Tiki Hola, like that's a great recruiting class, especially with Elijah Golden. I think he's around the top 100 by composite as well. You look at linebackers. I wouldn't say the linebackers. Like I would say that the linebacker class and the wide receiver class are similar in that regard, right? With Thomas Davis Jr., I do kind of feel like, and Jacoby Clapper, like I feel like though the both of those units, and there's only 2 at linebackers, so it's a little bit unfair, but I feel like both of those units has the types of football players. Like I look at Jacoby Clapper and someone like Devin Fitzgerald very similarly. I know Jamie feels a ton of good vibes about Jacoby Clapper in terms of his development of what he's going to be as a football player. That's kind of how I feel about like someone like Devin Fitzgerald or Bubba Frasier. Like I really like Bubba Frasier. I love his game and I love what he brings to Notre Dame because I don't know that Notre Dame has that, right? Legit 10-5 guy, right? I don't know that Notre Dame has that in their bag. And so to bring him in, like I feel like that's a big deal. Thomas Davis to me is a good bit similar to someone like Kaydon Finley. And Kadon Finley's probably a better prospect than Thomas Davis Jr., but they're kind of in that same mold. Obviously, the corners and the safeties at Notre Dame in this recruiting class are elite, like elite. So it is true. It's probably among the weaker positions, but that's just because the other positions have that elite player. Notre Dame doesn't have that single one elite player at Notre Dame. Although you could make the case for Kaydon Finley, you could, especially if a good senior year pops up. Like the only thing that he's missing is maybe that extra 10th in the 40 time. That's kind of it, right? So it looks. Who are we talking about? Looks so off the line. Able Gaming. If you're talking about Devin Fitzgerald, it's not. That's not. I'm not really concerned about that. I'm just not. I think he gets off the line just fine. I think he's going to be explosive enough. I mean, I didn't love, how Jaden Greathouse got off the line as a senior in high school, right? Like I just don't think he was a fleetest foot guy. Obviously, he gets off the line pretty well at Notre Dame. I'm not concerned about him from a physical standpoint. I think he's physical enough. Let's talk about Braden Robinson real quick because he is announcing on July 6th. If you want to be conspiratorial in that way, I think his original date was July 20th. If you want to be conspiratorial in that way, you could look at Kadon Finley, who is announcing on the 4th. You could look at Devin Fitzgerald, who's announcing on the 5th. And then you could look at Brayden Robinson moving his date to the 6th to have it be a 4, 5, 6, a 4th, 5th, 6th kind of announcement trio there. If you were conspiratorial in that way. This is one where I think it was very unknown whether Notre Dame was going to take a 5th wide receiver and whether if they were going to, that he was going to be the 5th wide receiver. Obviously, there's size questions there. I think there is some debate whether, his track times are really strange. He's got a 10.3 as a sophomore. And I think it's like, I want to say it's verified. Like, I don't know that it was super windy that day or anything like that. He's got like a 10.7 as a freshman, but then he has another like 10.8 as a junior. Hasn't run a ton of track, which surprises me. Like usually if you have a player who's running 10.3 as a sophomore, then they are going to continue to run track. But he didn't run that many events last year, right? He didn't run that much. So he kind of took track didn't take a front seat for him. It was kind of like something that he just did like once or twice. So I think there is some question about what that speed is. I just kind of go by the film and I look at where he is and the way that he plays and the juice that he plays with. Seems to be pulling away from people for me. Obviously there's the low-hanging fruit of his size, right? Like how big is he? Is he going to be big enough? Is he viable enough as a wide receiver? I think that we've seen enough players of his stature that have made impacts in college football to say, you know what, like, I think he's going to be okay. Like he certainly can have a role. He can do something for your offense, whether it be an explosive play here or there. I mean, obviously the obvious example is someone like, Jaden Harrison last year, who was not a big player, was not a super fast player. He ran a 4.5 at Notre Dame's pro day, right? So it's not like he was some 4.2 blazer. And he was able to win a game for Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, right? Like that's a huge contribution, and that means a lot. The one thing you can say about Brayden Robinson is he's never, I don't think he's ever going to be that kind of that, he's going to make a ton of volume plays for you, but he's going to make a play, it maybe once a game, twice a game, where he's doing something that helps you win a game, right? And he can be a difference maker on that front, right? Where he's playing all the time and he's always a threat. I mean, you see him making plays as a wide receiver. And I think Mike Frank has talked about this a bunch, where it's like, look, usually you see a speed guy and he's just smaller and he's like just a gadget, right? He makes plays as a wide receiver. He runs good routes. He uses his hands really well to catch the ball. He has very good hands. He's a tough player. I mean, you see him here climbing the ladder and going up for a pass. You see him doing things at wide receiver that lend itself to, developing in that area of his game, right? Obviously there he catches a slant and takes it to the house. So to me, this is 100% take for Notre Dame. There was some question about whether or not that would be the case. For me, it's 100% a take for Notre Dame, and you get him in the class, right? And that's what you want. And obviously Notre Dame's made that decision, and it's important to get speed in your room. Matt Freeman talks about this a ton about, Notre Dame has not been a fast football team at wide receiver. And we saw that a little bit last year when Jordan Faison went down. He was their post guy. He was their deep threat guy. And, Chris Mitchell didn't really bring that to the team the way that they thought. Bo Collins was a bigger guy, but he wasn't a vertical guy. Obviously there's some verticality with Jaden Greathouse, slot fades and that sort of thing, but you don't really see him cooking people, right? He's making plays in traffic. He's jumping over players, right? You don't really see that. Obviously, I don't want to say Will Fuller because he's on a kind of a class by himself, but you know what we're talking about, right? Like we're not seeing that verticality that you can have with some football players, and they need to get that in the class, right? And you got Bubba Frasier, you've got Dylan Faison, who is a speed guy. You got Brayden Robinson. And then Kadon Finley has that a little bit as well. You saw that on the tape. So that's what they need, right? You definitely need those traits. And the fact that Notre Dame is leaning into those traits, it pretends very well, right? Now, obviously, they do need to I don't want to say expand. They do need to take the next step with their wide receiver recruiting in terms of the caliber of players they bring in. But who they're bringing in is filling a need from what they don't have on the team. Michael Hahn says, isn't the O-line position where the ratings end up being the most inaccurate? I think so. Yeah, because it's hard to know because so often offensive linemen are going against competition that is so vastly inferior to them from a physical standpoint. I mean, they just throw guys around. You can't really see their technique. You can't see their feet. You can't see how, their hand placement, how they deal with someone who has a variety of moves, that sort of thing. It's very hard. And that's why Jamie's so good at evaluating it. That's why I'm kind of like, hey, if Jamie likes an lineman or if Jamie likes a D lineman or whatever it might be, like I very much take what he says to heart because he kind of knows it. He knows what he's looking for, right? And he's played it, and he's very good at that. So, that's something to keep in mind as well with the offensive line class. Raymond Horton asks or says there is some buzz around Cam Williams coming out of summer workouts. Yeah, I mean, you would hope so, right? I mean, I think that Mike has kind of talked about, that sort of thing. Irish Sports Daily wants to kind of keep that in house for the board, for the paying subscribers. Mike is very, I don't want to say protective. He values the money that people pay to our site, and the information like that he likes to keep to the board first. So that'll come out on the board when Matt puts that out, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. But Mike is very, he likes to honor the money that people pay to come to the site and get that kind of information. So, but if you've heard there's buzz around Cam Williams, I think that's obviously a positive, right? Like there needs to be positive momentum for Cam Williams as a wide receiver because, now Notre Dame's bringing in other wide receivers. You don't want to get passed by someone who's younger than you. You want to make strides, and he was just a freshman last year. So it's like, he's not running out of time, but it would trend very well if he started to make some serious strides in summer camp and then or summer workouts and then in summer camp. You want to hear buzz about him because that would kind of lend itself to, it's like, okay, he's ready to be a contributor. Envy Irish asks, are they still in Vallejo's ear? I'm thinking Tiki will be riding him like Seabiscuit until signing day. I think there might be a question about the spots, right? And I put on a show. I wonder if his spot went to Charlie Tom on the offensive line. There's an open question to me about, because I think if Notre Dame was taking 5 D linemen, that 5th spot was going to go to Alistair Vallejo, and that's kind of it. I don't think they wanted to take 5 D line if he wasn't going to be the 5th guy. And then he commits to Michigan. Notre Dame goes in and accepts a commitment from Charlie Tom to be the 6th offensive lineman. Would they take 5 D line in 6 O line? That's an open question, right? And I'm not debating whether or not they should or not. I just think we know that they were counting numbers on the D line. And so if you're counting numbers on the D line already, and then you take a 6th offensive lineman, I wonder if those numbers change. So that's something that remains to be seen. It would be smart to I think it would be smart for Notre Dame to keep a dialogue just in case, right? Because people decommit, happens all the time, right? People change their mind. You don't want to close everything off to a player like that. Talk to him. But if nothing else changes, it might be hard for me to see him coming into the class. Let me get to some more questions here. Love the questions. Able Gaming, so he's talking about Fitzgerald before, slow off the line. I just can't, and I don't like to do the blanket thing where it's like, well, his dad was Larry Fitzgerald. I just can't foresee a situation where he struggles with a technical aspect of the game like that. It's just hard for me to see. It's hard for me to see him being a miss. That's another part. Like sometimes there's prospects that come in and you say to yourself, if they were to miss, what is that going to look like? Right. And some you can kind of see. Like it's hard for me to see with Kaydon Finley. I can see it a little bit with Dylan Faison, right? Like he just doesn't pick up that nuance of the wide receiver position because he's got that lacrosse background as well. He's also a lacrosse player. If he doesn't pick up the nuance of the wide receiver position, obviously you can see it with Braden Robinson with the size, like he's just not big enough. With Devin Fitzgerald, it's hard for me to see it. Like where is he going to fail? I think he's a good enough athlete. It's similar to Elijah Burris as well, where you watch him and it's like, I don't know how good of a prospect he is, right? In terms of upside, but where is he failing? Where is it not working out with him? And then he comes in and he's immediately looking good, right? Like that's the part where, when I evaluate prospects, sometimes it's not the technical aspect. Sometimes it's like the bigger picture of if it's not working, where is it not working? Why is it not working? And so with Devin Fitzgerald, I understand where there's some things where he lacks, right? Like if he lacks a certain kind of burst or something like that, or like that certain type of athletic ability, right? Okay, maybe you could say that. But where is he failing? I don't see it. I just think he's going to be ready to play. I think he's going to be physically ready to play. I think he'll be mentally prepared for what Notre Dame is. So that's where I kind of bump him up a little bit in my mind. It's like I just think he's going to be good, and I don't see where it doesn't happen for him. So Eric Fasano asks, who would be first man up if one of the offensive tackles got hurt? Lambert, or would they slide Jagusaw plus put an Absher at offensive guard? I think part of this is it's an unknown because of the injury to Lambert, right? We don't really know where he's at with that. So that's kind of an open question. If we put the injury aside, I wonder if it was at right tackle, if he would then be slotted in. So if something happened to Emil Wagner, he had to miss a game or whatever it might be, I think it would be a lot easier for me to see Lambert work on the right side next to Jagusa than it is for me to see. Like, I feel like if something happened to Knapp, then maybe they would move Jagusa over to left tackle because he's played it in the game a couple of times, and then you move Absher to offensive guard. So that's interesting. I do think it kind of matters if it's the right tackle versus the left tackle. But that it kind of remains to be seen. I know Lambert has cross-trained, but like there's a difference between I've cross-trained and I am ready to play in a game at this position. So we'll see how that goes. But that's something we monitor. We really want to know where Lambert is in terms of his recovery, because he had that shoulder injury. So that'll be interesting to kind of track what his progress is. Envy Irish says, anyone see the picture Coach Washington posted? No brace on Botelho for whatever that means. I thought I saw pictures of Jags walking around with one for a while after surgery. She must be a good sign. I actually did see that. That's a good spot by Envy Irish. It is something that I noticed. Didn't have a brace on his shoulder for his pec or anything. It was a 4-month injury, right? And I guess Jagusa might have been around that time. I don't remember that. We had a little bit more clarity about what the exact injury was with Jagusa. So it'll be interesting with Botelho if it wasn't as severe. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an orthopedist, so I'm not sure what the what the exact injury was. So that's going to be something to monitor as well. Able Gaming asks, are you hearing anything good about Carr's leadership at summer camp? I have, actually. That he's kind of taken strides in that area from a leadership standpoint. I think that's interesting. I think that he has been prepping to be the man. He himself has been prepping to take control of this team for a good while now, going back to even last season, November, December, that sort of thing. Controlling what he can control on that front, right? Not that it was foregone or anything like that, but I think that he was taking proactive steps to be the man for Notre Dame. So that's interesting. I'm curious to get everyone's thoughts on. I'm curious to get everyone's thoughts on what you think of this wide receiver class. Because I'm, now that we kind of see what it might be and what we think it's going to be, right? I'm curious to get everyone's thoughts on that, because, there were a lot of questions about Mike Brown. Obviously, like it was mentioned before, they didn't get that elite guy, but they have gotten speed. They have gotten some pedigree. They've got some decent size, right? They've got some highly ranked individuals if they were to land Kaydon Finley. So I'm curious to see what everyone kind of talks about. And I'm going to throw up some clips of some of the guys like Dylan Faison and Bubba Frasier. We haven't seen them in a long time. Dylan Faison runs, very similar to his brother in terms of his style, right? They kind of have that. It's like they don't fully extend on that stride, but their turnover is good enough to where it's like they can pull away from people. I don't think either of them has that kind of elite long speed, but they have that good enough burst to where they can separate from people, right? So it's like I don't see them as sprinters, and in that short space where they can hit that quick acceleration, like you kind of see where that translates to something like lacrosse. So I think they're elite athletes, not necessarily elite runners. But I mean that thing that you like about Jordan and that you could like about his brother, if they're similar, and brothers tend to be similar in this way. They just are playmakers. They're just kind of, for lack of a better way to put it, just a couple of ballers. Jordan is able to cycle between sports and be kind of dominant at both. And the thing about Jordan too is like he came in as a walk-on to the Notre Dame football team, and obviously he was better than most walk-ons would be, but he just immediately was making plays against some of the best. He's making plays against Xavier Watts. He's making plays against Adon Schuler. He's making plays against, the safeties of then, right? So like Brown, DJ Brown, right? He's making plays against Ramon Henderson, right? These are players that Notre Dame wants to start for them, to play a ton of snaps on a very good defense, right? So I think the fact that those boys just seem to be good at everything. And obviously that portends well. And I think that people are I don't want to say the word sleeping on. It's just such a word, but I mean the acceleration you see from Bubba Frasier here. I mean, this is just different kind of speed. I mean, I think this is a faster player than even Chris Tyree was in the slot. I think he's bigger than Tyree, but he has that sprinter stride. Like, you do see the sprinting background in him where he can get out in the open and just extend those legs, and he can just really get going. And I love this clip here where he jumps over a player. So you see playmaking as a wide receiver that is kind of aside from any of his speed, attributes. As a runner here, you see him get around a corner. Like, when you see him get around a corner in that situation, like, players have angles on him and he's able to get to the corner in that situation. It's just hard, right? And that's like, when you want indicators of someone's true burst, this is where it shows up. Like on a play like that, where two players have angles on him and he's able to outrun both of them. Neither even gets a hand on him. I just think that's pretty special. And again, this is what Notre Dame needs, right? They need someone with this kind of burst, with this kind of acceleration, with the ball in their hands, to be able to scare teams, right? Like, we've seen so many wide receiver screens, bubble screens, and you think to yourself, I mean, maybe it's set up well, but they're just not going to – they just don't have the juice to really, hurt people in that way. So I that's what I like about him specifically. I think he's a better wide receiver than he would get credit for, because people just kind of point to the speed. I think he's got some real ball skills as a wide receiver that I'm excited about. And because since he committed such a while ago, he's not rated as highly. He's not the biggest guy. He doesn't have as much excitement around him, but I think he really adds to the class. And he makes the class he rounds it out, right? He brings that thing that, the others don't really have. Fitzgerald doesn't have. I don't even think Faison has it as well, to be honest. I think he's fast, but I don't think he has that burst. Finley is a fast player, like I talked about, doesn't have that. I mean, Frasier's a legit 10-5 guy, right? 10-5 is moving, right? You're an elite athlete. So let's see. Let me go some stuff here. Oh, Josh Miller. Solo show deserves some bucks. Go Irish. Thank you for the super chat. I was waiting for you. Josh, the people were saying, I was late to the show. I was waiting for you to pop in the chat, and you hadn't popped in. So, but you're here now. I appreciate the super chat. That's very, very kind. Raymond Horton says, hey, Greg, can you provide some backstory about what's going on at Southern Cal after we watched this class implode by November? I know you hear things living out there. Yeah, I mean, I do think there's some financial stuff going on with USC right now. I don't want to get into specifics because I wasn't really told specifics, but there's some financial stuff going on with USC. Scott Wolf put out an article about there's going to be some layoffs to their support staff, not just in the athletic department, but like athletic department adjacent. And look, they're spending a ton of money on people like Chad Bowden. I'm not going to say this is because of Chad Bowden. I'm not going to put that on him. And it's not really his responsibility to balance USC's books. That's not his deal. But they do have some stuff going on. I do think, and something I heard in the NIL space. And by the way, this is something that's, that's a point that I wanted to make about Notre Dame's class is, the thing with the clearinghouse is what you can do is a brand like Notre Dame can get a player into let's say an endorsement deal with, let's just say Under Armour for the sake of saying that, because they're a sponsor of theirs. They rep their clothes. Let's say Notre Dame gets Jeremiah Love into a deal with Under Armour. Well, because they're such a national brand, the money that Under Armour is then going to pay Jeremiah Love is going to pass through clearinghouse because Notre Dame's a national brand. They can command that type of figure, right? Whatever that figure might be. A player at, let's just say, Kansas State they can't really do that, right? So the clearinghouse is like, Kansas State, like they don't have that much reach. I'm sorry, this NIL deal doesn't pass muster for us, right? What Notre Dame does. USC falls into that category as well. USC in LA, there's a ton of juice that their earnings potential in LA as a USC player is different than somewhere else, right? And so we're obviously seeing USC do very, very well in the recruiting space right now. I think it's because of that. They can throw money around in a way that other teams can't because of the brand. Notre Dame has that brand as well. And I do want to point out, there's a lot of speculation about Ian Premer and the last minute nature of how Notre Dame kind of made up ground with him. And I don't know, right? No one's there. So I don't want to, say this was 100% NIL because it's never that. But this is a top 50 player in the country. Kansas State does not have a bunch of high-priced players on their roster. It's certainly not in their recruiting class that they are going to allocate funds for. They have a lot of funds for Ian Premer. And I just want to point out that for Notre Dame to land Joey O'Brien, for Notre Dame to land Rodney Dunham, for Notre Dame to land someone like Kadon Finley, who they're going up against Texas for now. Texas, an in-state player at wide receiver who Texas is prioritizing. For them to land him, should they land him. Elijah Golden, SEC teams, Alabama, who they are competing for Elijah Golden. Miami, right? When you look at Javion Osborne, when you look at Grayson McKeo, when you look at Aiden Pouncey, Kari Adams, these are not cheap players that Notre Dame has already allocated money for, right? If Notre Dame is to land Kadon Finley, that announcement was his commitment announcement was made long before Ian Premer decided. So for Notre Dame to have all those players that they have money allocated for, and then be able to meet whatever financial needs that Ian Premer had, like this is a new era. I mean, people talk NIL with Notre Dame all the time. It's a new era with Notre Dame that they are able to do that. And I think that a lot of the reason that Notre Dame has not been able to stack these elite kind of players in the same class is because they didn't have the funds for that the way other teams did. Notre Dame beat Oregon for Joey O'Brien and Kari Adams. Oregon. That's a serious NIL operation. Like you talk about brand. That's Nike University. Notre Dame's able to beat those guys in those recruitments. Notre Dame has turned money into a non-factor in terms of decision-making because wherever the other teams are, that's where Notre Dame is. This is a new thing. I think people really need to take heed of that. It's a huge development for Marcus Freeman and what he's trying to build, that Notre Dame can get into these types of recruitments and come out on top because NIL is not a hindrance, And so then it becomes about all the other things. It becomes about the culture. It becomes about Marcus Freeman. It comes about the facilities. It becomes about winning. It becomes about education and all that other stuff and Notre Dame's network and Notre Dame's brand. When you can take NIL out of the picture and you say, no, we're not going to lose in this area. I think we are seeing now what happens. And Matt Freeman put it on the board. He said teams were praying, colleges were praying that Notre Dame did not fully get into the NIL space because they knew what would happen if Notre Dame did. And now they have done so. And now we are seeing what can happen when Notre Dame does that. They have gone in head first, into that space. And now they are reaping the benefits. You can go head first into the social media space with a media company and you can go in head first and you can reap the benefits. If you can go with VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame Football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshot, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at bsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. All right, let's get some more of these comments. Able Gaming, thanks for taking the time to answer questions. Of course, sir. That's why we do the shows. I want the interactions. I love the interactions. That's why I like the solo shows sometimes. Obviously, Jamie's the man. He brings the insights, right? But I like the interactions. I like the interactions with the people who are continually in our shows all the time. CFB Hertz, always here. David Solomon, always here. Eric Fasano, always here. Able Game, Raymond Horton, always here, right? I love interacting with people who take the time to listen to our stuff and to take in our content. And are, of course, subscribers to Irish Sports Daily. Really appreciate that stuff. CFB Hurt says of the wide receiver class, a step in the right direction, but further improvement is needed if Notre Dame wants receivers to positively contribute at a national championship level. For sure. Yeah. I think they need, there's a lot of buzz about Malachi Fields. I think him blowing up would be huge. I think that would be a big deal, right? They need that. I mean, obviously CJ Carr doing it as well. Landing the bell would have been great as well. We don't have to talk about that. Could have landed Diabell. Eric Fasano says, I view the wide receiver class as has potential. If Notre Dame had a loaded wide receiver room, it would be fine to stretch. Fields could be at risk still if they don't pan out quickly. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Notre Dame wants to get out of this, looking into the portal every single year where it's like you just know, all right, we need two. We need two guys, and we need like a number one, right? Malachi Fields is kind of that. I'm sure Notre Dame wants to get out of that, just like they wanted, to get out of the quarterback space there as well. They were able to get out of it with quarterback. They have CJ Carr. They have Kenny Minchie, two guys that I know they felt good in. Notre Dame wants to do that wide receiver as well. David Solomon says Micah Gilbert needs to be a threat. Fingers crossed. I really like Micah Gilbert. I think he's a good football player. And he showed some stuff last year. Very, very excited about him and his future. It was a bummer about his finger. Broke it on the first drill, spring practice. You hate to see that. Eric Fasano says Kadon Finley seems likely to be successful. The others far less certain. If Gilbert Williams emerge with less anxiety, are you the class 100%? Yeah. I mean, because if Gilbert and Williams emerge there, then you have a runway. And not just that, you don't just have a runway, but you also have like very high potential with those guys. Like them emerging is them becoming like number one receivers. So that's where you get excited. It wouldn't just be an emergence from them. It would be kind of emergent to dominance there. Tony Vendatelli, I think Bubba Frasier will end up being the best. That's a good take. That's a good take, Tony. We'll remember that. Remind us in future shows. CFB Hertz says, as speed guys, how do you compare Frasier and Robinson to guys like KK Smith and Saldate? Between those two and also guys like Chris Mitchell and Jaden Harrison, Notre Dame hasn't done much with speed guys. I don't – see, the thing is like I never really thought Harrison was like a big speed guy. He was a big return guy, right? And that's a skill. I don't really see him as a big speed guy. Chris Mitchell, his tape was like, I don't know if I see it. He came in talking about he's not a 4.4, he's a 4.3. I didn't see that, and I never saw that. And I know that I know Mike Goolsby took some heat for calling that out at the time. I mean, I think I thought he was ultimately, for sure he was ultimately correct. I thought he's correct at the time. Whether it was politically correct the way he went about it is for someone else to decide. His main comments I thought were right in the moment. I was like, I don't know if I see this. And I think Jamie and I kind of talked about it. I thought he'd be better. I thought he had a little bit more juice to end up having, but I never really saw that. So to answer the question, I think that Bubba Frasier is faster than KK Smith. I think he's faster than Smith and Saldate. Saldate is interesting to me. Like his tape is much better than his track times were. He was like a low 11-second, high 10-9 guy. His tape showed a lot more juice. And look, there's been positive comments about him throughout his time at, for as long as he's been at Notre Dame. Not like glowing, but like people are happy about him. So he is an interesting one to track. I think Bubba Frasier, I don't know that Robinson to me is in the KK Smith mold of like when I watch KK Smith warm up, I'm like, man, that guy, he glides. And I like that. I like it when there's easy speed. And I think Bubba Frasier has easy speed. I think Bubba Frasier has an acceleration that does not exist on the roster from anyone. So that's why I'm excited about him. That's why Tony's excited about him. Tony's fired up. We love to see that. Let's see. Raymond Horton says, not always in the chat, always lurking, usually lurking and listening. Great show. Appreciate you, Raymond. I appreciate that. Able Gaming, I appreciate you. Thank you for your participations. Let's see. Michael Hahn says, Notre Dame still isn't the top spender, but it's definitely competitive. That's for sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know who the top spender would be. Because here's the other part. Right? Jeremiah Love, not cheap. Leonard Moore, not cheap. Bryce Young, not cheap. I mean, you have players. That's the other part. When you have youth on your roster that is elite, Drake Bowen, KVA, you have youth on the roster, CJ Carr, right? These guys, you have to fund all of it. And it's kind of becoming like a little bit like the NFL, or if it will become this way, and I wonder if it does. If you know how in the NFL, right, you got to pay the quarterback. And if you pay the quarterback, then you got to sacrifice somewhere else. You can't pay the wide receiver. You can't pay the offensive lineman. You can't pay the running back. So I wonder if in college football, it'll be a thing where it's like, hey, you got to pay to retain your roster, to retain the talent that you have. And I wonder if you're going to see teams like really lean into that, like, because the thing about the portal often is that it's a one-year thing. It's like expiring contracts, right? And like that you hear about it in the NBA all the time. You bring in an expiring contract, and then that money can go somewhere else the next year. Whereas if you bring in studs like Kari Adams and Joey O'Brien and Ian Premer and Javion Osborne, well, now you have players that you need to pay year over year while also bringing in elite talent. That's going to be tricky. And that's also why it's very good to have an NFL GM or an NFL guy who has already worked in a front office this way, like Notre Dame did with Mike Martin, who has to handle all this stuff. Like, that's why Notre Dame was very savvy to make that move. That's an underrated thing in college football right now, is that you have to be able to not only bring in the top guys, you got to retain your roster. And Notre Dame is very young, and they have very elite talent in their youth. And you got to retain them, and it costs a lot of money. And not just that, but they're proven too. Jeremiah Love, proven. Leonard Moore, proven. Bryce Young, proven to an extent. But, like, he's a defensive end, right? He costs a lot of money. So these are things that are bubbling. And then Notre Dame's able to excel. I'm telling you, that Mike Martin move, big time. Big time. All right, let's get to more comments and questions. Steven Sholkowski says, in the era of everyone transferring, somehow Marcus Freeman has managed to create the best depth Notre Dame has had since yes, that is his special sauce. And it's fortunate that Notre Dame has a coach with a special sauce like that. I mean, the culture thing is big. The culture thing is really, really big. And he's been able to sell it. I mean, just think about when he speaks, be it to the media, be it at these press conferences, whenever, podcasts. every time he speaks, he says something and it hits you. And you think, yeah, like that's how I want my coach to sound. He doesn't complain. He's never complaining. He's never complaining about the travel schedule. He's never complaining about, Notre Dame lost a day. They had to prepare for the Orange Bowl. They had 2 less days to prepare. They had to play at night. Or I'm sorry, they would have had to play at night. They had 2 less days to prepare for the Orange Bowl than Penn State did. Never said a word about it. Never said a word about it. He just didn't. It wasn't coming into his mindset. He just went and did it. Everyone appreciates this. It's everyone. Everyone appreciates that. So it's a big deal, and that's why Notre Dame, I think, is able to do that because, and look, not to make the juxtaposition to Brian Kelly, but he was not that way. Brian Kelly was always ready to point out what was going against him. Marcus Freeman doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. And I think that Notre Dame has had the reputation of being an entitled program, and people look at them as an elite, right? Like, oh, the snobby Notre Dame, religious school is an elite school. They look down on people. Marcus Freeman is not that way. He isn't that way. He's a worker, He's just, he has that vibe about him. And I think people gravitate to that, and it fits Notre Dame now, and it fits the program, and it fits what the players want to be. It fits what the program wants to be. It fits what the kind of the student body wants to be. And so it's a good mix. It's a good mix. Irish, Gordian, Knott got up at 3 a.m. so I could be done by noon. My weekend starts early today. Cheers, y'all. Nailed it. IGK, we appreciate that. I hope you have a great 4th. Hope everyone has a great 4th. Look, it's setting up to be a huge weekend, like I said, to kind of bring it back to the start. Notre Dame could get commitments from Kaydon Finley on Friday, Devin Fitzgerald on Saturday, Brayden Robinson on Sunday. They could get that. Fill out the wide receiver class. They could fill up there. On the 11th is Nick Reddish. He could fill up the Notre Dame defensive back class, bringing them five of the best prospects I think Notre Dame has ever had the possibility of landing. It would be enormous, right? We're talking about Nick Reddish, Joey O'Brien, Chasen Smith, Kari Adams, and Aiden Pouncey. I think people are sleeping on Aiden Pouncey on that front. I think he is. His bio on 247 lists him at 6'2.5", 160. I promise you, he does not weigh 160. He is, and Matt Freeman, again, Matt has been very critical of Notre Dame's size. He doesn't love Notre Dame's size a lot. And he saw Aiden Pouncey on campus when he came for his official visit. And he said, man, that is a big football player. That is a big guy. And he's kind of forgotten in the class. I think he's ranked somewhere in the top 150 by composite for 247. Could get higher. Speaking of pedigree, he's got that NFL pedigree as well. So much pedigree that Notre Dame is bringing in now. Marcus Freeman's bringing in that just the pro football player's sons. It's huge. It's a huge development, I think, for what Notre Dame's doing. Nick Reddish could round out the class from a defensive back standpoint, and then Elijah Golden could round out the class from a defensive line standpoint. This is as big as any of the others, between Elijah Golden and Kadon Finley. I think they're equally as big at their positions. Notre Dame has been on these 2 players for a very, very long time, and they have prioritized Kadon Finley. They've prioritized Elijah Golden. They've been able to play the long game. They didn't force, they didn't try to force commitments before players were ready. They let them take their visits. They trusted their own process. They trusted their own recruiting. Elijah Golden, go on your officials. Go on all of your officials. And then come to Notre Dame at last. And then Notre Dame tries to close the deal. And we feel like Notre Dame leads in this recruitment. Same thing with Kadon Finley. Played the long game with him. Go to Texas, or come to Notre Dame, then go to Texas and give them the last shot. Notre Dame was able to put forward put their best foot forward with Kadon Finley. And it looked like he went to Texas. And Mike Frank, I think, had it right. I think it got to the point where he had decided on his own. He had just decided, I want to go to Notre Dame. And we think that's where it is. And we think that's where it is going to be tomorrow. There's obviously caveats to this sort of thing, right? Ian Premer, crystal balls to Kansas State the night before, crystal balls the morning of. Then it comes in, let's go. Notre Dame made a move. He announces for Notre Dame. Things change very quickly in recruiting. Could change for Notre Dame as well. And if it does, then we'll be here to talk about it and analyze it. But until then, we're going forward with the information that we have. So we can end it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you heard, hit that like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. So whenever it is, we are going live. We're going to see when the next show is. I'm on vacation next week. Mike Frank is on vacation next week as well. So there's not going to be a power hour. Jamie and I need to figure something out, right? I do have access to the internet. I will try to do a show while I'm on vacation because we think there's going to be a lot going on. So stay tuned on that. We'll come up with something for the people. Someone put in the show, I'm a man for the people. I'm a man for you guys. So again, hit that like, hit subscribe, notification bell. Have a great 4th. Be safe, everyone. Be safe on the 4th. Enjoy your parties. Enjoy your barbecues. Enjoy being with family and friends. And it's hopefully going to be a great weekend for everyone. So have a good one. We'll talk to you soon. And as always, keep hitting and hustling.